This is not America's Next Top Best Friend.
I've had enough of you beast. Beast? Yeah.
You need to watch yourself before you get checked.
Who gonna check me, boo?
Should've never called me a fat ass Kelly Price.
Everything about you is perfect. Did you stone those tights? Oh, you're smiling.
And would you stop taking pictures of yourself? Your sister's going to jail.
Empty chair, do a solo.
Bye, pumpkin. Bye, pumpkin.
How do you know what's good for me? That's my opinion!
This is the Recap Episode, a weekly podcast about exploring and analyzing the stories told by reality TV season by season. I'm your host, Walker, social scientist and reality TV superfan. For this episode, I'm covering the third season of Jersey Shore, the docuseries following a group of 8 friends who spend their time together partying, hooking up, fighting, making up, fighting some more, and ultimately becoming one big family, with all the ups and downs that brings. If you like what you hear in this episode, then consider giving the show a follow on your preferred podcasting platform, rate and review the show, and follow the pod on social media on Instagram at The Recap Episode. After 2 successful seasons of this show, MTV, of course, wanted to keep the party going, and thus Jersey Shore earned a Season 3. Now, there's an interesting thing that happens, I think, once you've gotten past 2 seasons of a show. First season will set the precedent, and then second season has to kind of step the game up, right? You want to keep audiences, you want to keep the network and the channel you're airing on interested, thinking they can make money off the show, and most importantly, you have to figure out where you're going to go next. Do you keep doing the same thing you did in Season 1, or do you change up the format? Jersey Shore changed things up. They moved the show from Seaside Heights in Jersey to Miami, which was a beneficial change, gave the cast new things to do and explore and new things to deal with, but the show also raised its own stakes. We got more deeper explorations of relationships in Season 2 than we did in Season 1. Once you get past the second season, though, you still have to do the same thing where you want to keep your audience engaged and want them to come back, but you have kind of earned yourself a core fan base that you can build off of. So then it becomes a matter of both retaining this fan base and also finding ways to pull in new fans and new audience. One way to do that is to just drastically change up what you're doing. We see this happen often in competition shows where they'll suddenly introduce like a brand new format or a twist, and that keeps things exciting and it keeps people talking about the show, and it may bring in new audience members who are previously not interested but may be interested in said change or twist. For a docuseries, you don't quite have the same thing unless you do something like send the party abroad, or perhaps bring in a new cast member, one that may have history with the cast or one who's going to shake things up completely. Now, I liked Season 1 and Season 2, so I was pretty excited to get into Season 3, even though I did take a bit of a break. The episodes for Jersey Shore are 44-ish minutes each, around. They fit into an hour time slot, so they can take a little while to watch, take notes on, think about what I'm going to talk about, and there were 13 episodes in this season, so it took a little bit for me to get through it. But I was excited, and minor spoiler alert for how the rest of this podcast episode is going to go. I was a little disappointed, or maybe a lot bit disappointed. We'll see how I feel by the end of talking about it all. But this season didn't quite have the same star power as the previous 2 did, or the spectacle, or the engagement. There were a lot of low points in this season, if I'm being honest. If you'd like a somewhat in-depth recap and review and analysis of those first 2 seasons, then I recommend checking out my previous episodes about Jersey Shore. But I'll give a brief recap of major important events from those seasons leading into this season to help this episode go along. In Season 1, of course, 8 strangers moved into a shared house in Seaside Heights in New Jersey. They're spending all summer there to have a good time and enjoy the vibes and the people. In Season 1, Ronnie and Sam end up in this weird on-off relationship. Snooki initially struggles to adjust to the new environment, but takes the whole experience as a journey of maturity. Jenni has trouble with her boyfriend, Tom, after being messy with some guys. Polly gets a stalker, who really actually wasn't a stalker. Mike, Vinny, and Polly show off their hookup game. Jenni punches Mike in the face twice for starting shit and being an instigator. And Angelina left after only 1 week, only being around for about 2 or 3 episodes. That's Season 1 of Jersey Shore. In season 2, the gang goes down to Miami for a few months in late spring. Angelina came back to the show, but had a very difficult time reestablishing herself in the house and as part of this family, eventually leaving again after multiple fights with basically everyone, both verbal and physical. Polly and Vinny explore the potential for real romance, and Mike gets on pretty much everyone's nerves. Ronnie and Sam start broken up at the beginning of season 2, but decide to still be with each other early on in the season. However, after some initial arguments, Ronnie gets very, very messy behind Sammy's back, hooking up with random women and then coming home to Sam and being sweet to her. Eventually, everyone but Sam learns about Ron's behavior. Snooki and Jenni write a famous anonymous note to Sam to reveal what Ron has been doing, but this drastically backfires when Sam turns on them instead, pushing her close to Ron as a result. Sammi and Ron end the season together again. There was also some development between Vinny and Snooki that does get explored a little bit more in this third season. Now, it's well documented that production showed season 2 to the cast while they were filming season 3, and this had some clear effects on the events of this third season. Season 2 wrapped filming in May 2010, and then season 3 was filmed from July 25th to September 4th, 2010, starting only 2 months after they wrapped filming season 2. Season 2 was aired from July 29th to October 21st that same year. So the previous season of events, which occurred only months ago for the cast, aired over the time span of a 3-month window that started only 4 days into filming the third season. And production decided to let the cast watch themselves be aired on season 2 while also filming them in season 3. I don't want to say this is unheard of. It does happen in like the reality TV production world where you get to let your cast watch specific pieces of media even though you're restricting them from all technology and contact outside world so that they only have to do things with their castmates so you actually have usable footage to make a show. But this is very interesting in that there was a lot of information that was withheld, particularly from Sammi, and I'll definitely get into this, that she only learned by watching season 2, and that changed her relationships with people in the cast during the middle of season 3. Now, the schedule of all that I just said is, like, insane. But at the same time, when the show is as successful as it is, you follow where the money and the opportunities are. And if you're essentially getting paid to hang out and party while dealing with a production crew following you around, that's not too bad of a deal to have. But, and I mentioned this in season 2 a little bit, that the going to Miami, putting them all down there, you could tell in certain moments that it was a bit of a stressor on the cast, and they were not having as good of a time as they were back in season 1. And I think the same thing can be said every now and then in this season. You can recognize when filming the show is starting to get to some of the cast members just a little bit. Okay, before I get into the recap of the third season, I do want to say, again, that I really did enjoy seasons 1 and 2. I'd only ever seen clips of Jersey Shore before diving into it for the podcast, and I ended up having a good time with the first 2 seasons. This one, however, was a little questionable. After the first 2 episodes, I was not feeling it. It did grow on me, but then it lost me again, and then I found myself like 3/4 of the way through the season, and I kind of just wrote it out till the end. Parts of this season really, really did feel like a low point for the series so far, which isn't great when you're thinking about like audience retention and wanting to bring them back for a later season, but it worked out in the end. Jersey Shore got 6 seasons total and like 4 spinoffs, and now they're still doing, well, now they're ending Family Vacation, but Family Vacation got like 19 seasons. So, this season aired 13 episodes in the first part of 2011, from January 6th to March 24th. Similar to how I covered season 2, rather than give a play-by-play of each episode and every event, I'm going to discuss and analyze the major and minor plots that we followed through this season. Now, as I mentioned before, I was disappointed with this season, in large part because it was dominated by one large plot line that spanned the entire season, which was not very fun to watch, I'm not going to lie. There were other engaging and entertaining things happening, but we had to keep coming back to the story of Sammi and Ronnie, which just dug deeper and deeper. To kind of show what I'm talking about and explain my frustration with this, I want to highlight another early season story that had really big potential but was instead largely sidelined to focus on the miserable duo. Episode 1, of course, features everyone recapping previous events and traveling to Seaside. We're immediately thrown into quite an interesting plot. Since Angelina is no longer part of the show, there's an open spot in the group of 8. So, Snooki brings along her friend, Dina, to be a new member of the cast. Dina is kind of like a bizarro Snooki, in that they're like similar in theme and trope and convention, but still different and entertaining in their own ways. Because Dina is new to this group, she's of course nervous about how she'll fit in and how the others will accept her. She takes no time to make herself comfortable and show who she is around the gang, but she's already hitting on both Mike and Vinny shortly after everyone moves in. Snooki does step in regarding Vinny, because Vinny hooked up with Snooki's friend Ryder between seasons 2 and 3, and she doesn't want him doing the same with Dina. Also because she has her own developing feelings for Vinny that I'll get into later. However, Dina starts off horribly with Ronnie and Sammi. Sam already knows she's coming into the house to Snooki and Jenni against her, and because Dina is Snooki's friend, Sam immediately assumes it's going to be a 3 versus 1 among the ladies in the group. Ronnie starts out by calling her a gremlin, and Sammi refuses to learn Dina's name, then makes comments about her little nickname, as if Sammi isn't still labeled Sweetheart on screen, I might add. Sammi even compares Dina to a dirty chihuahua at one point, and then we get a glimpse of mean, scary Ronnie when Dina starts complaining to the others about their treatment of her, and he wants to confront her about this. Dina really wants to start good with everyone, though, and is mostly just confused as to why Sammi and Ronnie are being so mean to her. So, she has a rough first day, mostly because of Ronnie and Sammi, but her experience does greatly improve. She ends up getting along well with most of the dudes, and of course she's very close to Snooki and Jenni. However, the season spends much more time focused on the larger plot of Ronnie and Sammi, such that Dina's journey to make herself part of this found family is really put on the back burner. We do get to see her be involved in hijinks, such as a prank war, taking sides in arguments, and having her own adventures both by herself and with other cast members. However, I really want to make a comparison here to Angelina in Season 2. Angelina came back into the group after departing dramatically in Season 1, and everyone told her she has to really put in the work to be accepted. We'll then show her doing this, apologizing to Snooki, comforting Sammi, hanging out with the guys, and she was making good progress until everyone realized she's the queen of double standards and getting mad when she can't get her way. Dina, however, doesn't get quite the same depth of journey in this season, because she's kind of delegated to extra stuff going on while we focus on Ronnie and Sammy's relationship roller coaster. By episode 8, Dina does have a moment where she gets frustrated with her lack of progress with the group as a whole, potentially considering going home. She is, however, very drunk during this outburst, and the others manage to calm her down, but this is really interesting to me and important for her storyline, as it's showing that it can take a lot more than just playing along in order to truly become part of the group. Eventually, in a scene towards the very, very end of the season, when the whole group is out at a restaurant eating dinner, Dina gets the opportunity to thank everyone for accepting her, and the group shares in this sentiment. She is officially part of the gang, but again, I just wish this could have been explored more. Most of the rest of Dina's focus throughout the season is, again, little hijinks, which are entertaining, but it doesn't really give us a lot to do with her as a character. And then there's a few times where she's intertwined into Ronnie and Sammy's story. So with Dina pretty much covered, although she'll come back when I talk about Vinny later, I guess, want to get into Ronnie and Sammi now. Their relationship misadventures continue this season, much to the misfortune of everyone else. Sammi and Ronnie travel to Jersey Shore together in the beginning of episode 1, and they're actually the first ones to arrive at the share house, and they choose to take the nice upstairs bedroom for themselves and I guess a third person, because it notably has 3 beds. This confuses everyone, and once they all start arriving, they all remark that this is a very weird behavior. Why wouldn't the couple take one of the rooms with only 2 beds? In previous seasons, the other cast members have also complained about how Ronnie and Sammi tend to isolate themselves, so maybe that's an element of their game here. I think they just wanted to be in the nicer room that had its own bathroom and balcony, and in addition have the room that is a bit further away from everything else going on. Either way, they purposefully set themselves apart from the rest. Sammi is coming into the season on bad terms with Snooki and Jenni, and doesn't even want to consider starting anew. Bad for them, but great for TV. As I already mentioned, Sammi and Ronnie are both also very nasty to Dina right off the bat. While she's talking to the others about Sammi during the first day in the house, Ronnie comes to defend Sammy's name, bringing Scary Ron to the front for the first time for this season and for Dina. Sam comes to join in on this attack, at which point Snooki starts in then, calling Sam the biggest bitch she's ever seen in her life, and wondering aloud how Sam has any friends given her sour and bad attitude. Somehow, Jenni also gets pulled in at some point, to the extent that she and Sam end up having another physical fight, the first one happening last season in Miami. Production ends up separating Jenni and Sammi from each other, and the 3 versus 1 setup that Sammi was complaining about is now both established and reinforced. And that's episode 1. Ronnie continues to then isolate both of them early on, including missing out on the first big family dinner, which so far has never really happened throughout the season. Pretty much everyone's been there, unless they're like in jail or something. Even when there were like arguments and fights, everyone still came together around dinner. You know, the power of breaking bread, the power of having a meal as a family. Ronnie and Sammi try to make small talk with Polly and Vinny after missing dinner, but when Polly comments that they missed it, Sam says she doesn't care. Then Sammi and Ronnie both get dragged out onto the boardwalk with the whole crew, where Sam is miserable the whole time and Ronnie has an okay time. And I just want to point out, like, while watching the second episode, I legitimately was like, what is going on? Why is she even here? Like, she's having such a horrible time. She doesn't want to participate in anything. She's antagonistic towards almost everyone. Ronnie is still just like Ronnie. I will say at this point, similar to last season, he's kind of wanting the best of both worlds. He wants to be with Sammi, but he also wants to have fun in his own way. And unfortunately, these 2 goals cannot coexist, both because of the type of fun Ronnie wants to get into, and also Sammy's own ego and attitude on this relationship. Near the end of episode 2, Ronnie and Sammi discuss what he did to her in Miami. In case you need a recap, again, Ronnie and Sammi were on this on-again, off-again kind of thing, and he was out at the club getting very, very wasted and hanging out and macking on and hooking up with all these women, and then he'd come home and be sweet and nice to Sammi behind her back completely. And this went on for a while before anyone had the drive to do anything and say anything about it, which resulted in Jenni and Snooki's infamous note, which then just blew up even further. The cast got to watch season 2, as I mentioned earlier during this. And Sammi, finally, because she got to watch the show, saw everything Ronnie was doing behind her back and all of his bad behavior. So then Sammi and Ronnie proceeded to have multiple arguments about everything that went down in Miami. And at this point in this season, Ronnie then tells Sammi to leave him alone. He's done. He's finished with her. I just want to say again, I was already so over all of this. It wasn't interesting or engaging to watch, and we kept having to cut away for more entertaining events to continue the Ronnie and Sammi show. I'll be honest, I'm surprised the production didn't start meddling just to get them to do anything else as well, given that Sammi just preferred to, like, hang out in her bed most of the time, and there were, like, cuts in the first episode of the gang having, like, fun drinking on the roof or playing some game. And then it would just cut to Sammi and Ronnie being miserable in the bedroom, just like laying in bed. And Sammi would be like, what are they doing? Should we go up there? And it's like, yes, go be part of the group of your friends. What are you doing? But, you know, it is well documented that production on Jersey Shore was very, very hands-off in these first 3 seasons when it came to the events of the show. For better or for worse, as we'll discuss a little bit later with what happens with these 2. Despite Ronnie saying that he's done and he's finished with Sammi, they are of course still hanging out together, even though they both recognize that this is pretty unhealthy. Which is why this season got held hostage by these 2. Every time we'd watch something fun, or the other cast members were doing something interesting, the episode would be jerked back onto their story, which is not fun to watch. If it wasn't arguing, it was them moping around and isolating themselves. Then it was on and off with how they treat each other. One of them would say they don't want to do anything anymore with the other, and then we'd see them close again a few minutes later. It was frustrating, and it made the watching experience kind of bad. We did get a break from them in episode 4 that was more focused on Jenni and Snooki's plots, but then we're back with them in their drama again in episode 5. While out at the club, Sammi notices Ronnie talking to some random woman. She confronts him about this, and it turns into another argument back at home. Sammi goes to cool off and chill out after this argument by hanging out with the rest of the gang, because at this point, and I had forgotten to mention this earlier, she had actually started making amends with some of them. After seeing herself and what was happening in season 2, she went and apologized to Snooki about her behavior and for cutting off their friendship, and Snooki accepted that apology and started to rebuild what they had. Sammi also went and apologized to Dina for being so nasty to her at the start of this season, basically saying like that was unfair to her. You know, Sam's relationship with Nicole and with Jenni are with Nicole and Jenni, and they shouldn't influence how she's going to act and behave around Dina. And Dina accepts this apology as well. And all the dudes are just happy that there's less arguing. So Sammy's hanging out with the rest of the group. Meanwhile, the Ronnie decides to take his anger out in a different way. Instead of cooling off, he decides to trash all of Sammy's stuff. Mike just also stands there and watches while Ronnie pulls everything out of Sammy's closet and throws it all around. While Sammi discovers the aftermath of this rampage, Ronnie goes to confide in Jenni. The two of them have somehow maintained a friendly relationship during season 2 and through now, in part because of shared trauma and experiences, and Jenni was someone to lean on for Ronnie back in season 2. Mike tells Sammi that Ron and Jenni are talking, which upsets Sam and sends her into a bit of a rage because she still doesn't like Jenni. She goes and demands Ronnie tell her if he's friends with Jenni, and after yelling in his face and him not really answering much, she punches him in the jaw. Which that's 2 big tone shifts at once. Up until now, all of Ronnie and Sammy's disputes have been verbal. Ronnie trashing her stuff, and then Sam punching him escalates this all to a brand new level. And you can feel it when it happens. After this punch, Sammi feels horrible. She wants to leave the house. She wants to leave the show. She wants to go home. Most of the rest of the gang sit with her to calm her down and get her to reconsider, but she's set on leaving. Vinny has a really good line here where Sammy's like, God's telling me to go home. And Vinny's like, that's not God, Sammi, that's your ego. Sammi packs up her bags, and she goes to apologize to Ronnie for punching him. She explains feeling betrayed when seeing him talk to Jenni, but Ronnie doesn't really have anything to say back to her. And then, listeners, I this is in all caps in my notes because I got so annoyed. Sammi gets into bed with Ronnie while she waits for her mom to come get her. I can't stand these two. They're so aggravating. After all that, however, Sam decides to stay. The very next morning, she's feeling better. Later in the episode, she's seen having a good time with the rest of the cast, which is good to see that she's not super duper afflicted by all this, but it's this like back and forth, and you're like, what's going on? Jenni even attempts to start to rebuild a relationship with Sammi and Ron by offering to buy them drinks while out at Karma, and let's, bridge this gap that has been made between us. At the start of episode 6, we're not even halfway through this season, things seem to be going well, which really just serves to show how up and down this relationship swings. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's self-destructive and drags everyone in around it as well. Sammi goes with Ronnie to the doctor in this episode, which is very sweet, but then when they get back, there's bickering about how much Sammi does for him, mostly in the housekeeping sense, with like cooking and cleaning, which kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. Later in this episode, when getting ready to go out to Karma, they argue again while everyone else waits on them, and Sammi hits Ronnie with the line, "Why don't we just break up?" A later argument results in Ronnie snapping and agreeing that they should break up. Ronnie also calls Sammi fake and says that without him around, she'd have no friends in the house. And it seems like they decide to split the room apart the next morning, because again, they were in the 3-person bedroom with Mike around all the time as well. That doesn't really happen. Instead, Mike steps into all of this mess in a pretty bad way. He starts to talk to Sammi about everything that's going on, particularly about how the events in Miami left some trauma that they need to deal with. This angers Ronnie, of course it does, because to him, Mike is now turning his back on his bro to support Sammi. Bro code is out the door, suddenly girl code is here, whatever that means. Mike is known for being an instigator that likes to play both sides, and this can definitely be seen that way. Either way, Ronnie is ready to put Mike in his place, and he's letting everyone know. Paulie decides to take Ronnie out to the boardwalk to get his mind off of dealing with Mike and Sammi, and Dina does the same with Sammi. Let's separate them, let's take them out, let's calm them down, get him to do literally anything else. Good for Paulie and Dina. Stars of the show. I love Paulie. He's great. I love Dina too. She's also awesome to watch when she's having fun. However, Paulie and Ronnie end up walking past the bar that Sammi and Dina are hanging out at, and Sammi, for some reason, thinks that she's seeing Ronnie walking with a new girl already, so she starts flirting with random dudes at this bar, and everything's just getting, messy. Later on, Sammi tries to defend Mike, but Ronnie shuts this down, and there's, of course, a lot of yelling about bro code, about the things Mike said in Season 2 about Ronnie's behavior in the infamous note, and eventually Mike just chooses to apologize to end it all. Ronnie seems content with this, but Paulie and I both know that this is just a pattern with Mike, and he apologizes to get his way. He did it in Season 1, he did it in Season 2, he's doing it again here. And I will say for Mike, unfortunately, he does have a track record where this is successful. The two lovebirds continue to argue, and for once it seems like something is actually hashed out a little bit. Ronnie expresses being hurt by her past behaviors. When the whole gang is getting ready to go out that night, Sammi asks Ronnie what he'll do if a girl comes up to him. They are broken up at this point, remember, and Ronnie points this out, which then causes Sammi to, lose it. She's shouting, he's shouting, it starts sounding real bad, to the point where everyone's like, this is not the same as before, this fight is different. Mike gets the guys to intervene and physically separate the two, taking Sammi downstairs and taking Ronnie out onto the balcony upstairs. The ladies sit with Sammi to try to calm her down, and they help her get all dolled up to go out and distract her, take her mind off this. But meanwhile, Ronnie is back to destroying Sammy's stuff again, and this time everything. He throws almost everything she has out onto the balcony, including her bed, and actually breaks a bunch of her stuff too. He then starts making comments about how she better not be around when he comes back from the club with a girl. So now we have vindictive and vengeful Ronnie, which we've seen a little bit before and is not fun to watch and is kind of scary for everyone involved. This is a piece of why many people speculate, including possibly production members, about why no one ever really stepped in to help them resolve this. In large part, it was fear of Ronnie. In Season 2, Snooki and Jenni went through about doing the note because they didn't want to just tell Sammi directly and then have Sammi tell Ronnie that they were the ones who told her this stuff because they were afraid of Ronnie's wrath and his, retribution. And we can clearly see here why they were, justified in being afraid. He's going on an actual, rampage here. Somehow they get everyone to go out to the club. I think accidentally to the same club. It's very played out that it's the ladies are taking Sammi out to go be away from everything else, and the dudes are taking Ronnie out to go be away from everything else, but then they end up in the same place anyway. Hard to tell if that was an accident or what exactly was going on there. But while at the club, Sammi is all over dudes and dancing and trying to enjoy herself, and this really pisses Ronnie off, of course. He makes some comments about wanting to wring Sammy's neck, which is sending up every possible red flag and alarm at once. Or is, just concerning at the very least. Mike takes Ronnie home to get him away from all this so he doesn't have to see Sammi, and he continues to destroy more of Sammy's stuff. Sammi gets back from the club to find the aftermath of Ronnie's second rampage. In a very, very difficult scene to watch, she specifically discovers her glasses are shattered, which she holds in trembling hands while on the verge of breaking down, sobbing on the floor. Ronnie is up on the roof with Mike, cooling off, and Sammi comes up there, silent, crying, just holding the glasses out towards him. She's trying to say something about how the one time that she does something out of spite, Ronnie takes it way too far and does all this, but Ronnie doesn't want to hear it. His ego and his pride have been damaged. And for the dudes in this context, in this scene, that is one of the worst things that you could do to them, is destroy their sense of self. The next morning, sitting amid her wrecked belongings, Sammi makes the decision to actually leave. She wants to go home, be around her family, and take a break from everything in Seaside. And she does. She does actually leave this time. After she leaves, Ronnie is depressed for a while, which really quick turn on that. He tries to talk to the ladies in the house, and Jenni asks him if he ever even wanted this relationship in the first place, which he doesn't really answer. Ronnie is so upset and so down that he is even crying in the bathroom while at work at the Shore store, to Snooki's annoyance. And at one point, however, he makes an attempt, I guess, to try to cheer himself up or make himself feel better by doing some love bombing, which I'm just going to say is something I've noticed is a common strategy among these dudes. Mike and Vinny both pulled this as well in the past. Ronnie decides to send flowers to Sam and her sister because it's her sister Nikki's birthday that weekend. And he does this for he sets up flower deliveries for 3 days in a row. Different kind of roses for the next consecutive 3 days. I don't know, if I was Sam in that situation, I would still feel like this is a way of him trying to attack me. I'm just going to say. That's what it feels like. That's how it reads to me. It's the love bombing thing. It's Ronnie trying to find a way to make himself feel better by doing this oh, this counts as an apology. This will smooth things over, The ladies decide to move all of Sam's stuff out of the room upstairs because it was just sitting around the room that Ronnie and Mike are still in. They manage to get most everything hidden away, but they miss a bag that was in the bathroom. Ronnie notices this and then starts trying to figure out what's going on, eventually discovering that Jenni is on the phone with Sammi in that moment, and he leaves the bag with Jenni and he stomps away. Dina eventually, during a sort of heart-to-heart that she has with Ronnie about fitting in at the house, which again would have been great to explore more, but we had to focus on Ronnie and Sammi the whole time, Dina eventually comes clean with Ronnie about this scheme during that conversation. And he's not too upset or mad about it. He understands it, and I think he's thankful that Dina was truthful with him about it. Because the alternative is he was thinking that Sam came back for her stuff, and that was going to be a whole other set of problems if that was happening. Later on, the whole gang is going out at the clubs and are trying to have fun. We get some real sad, and not sad in a melancholic way, sad in a pathetic way, footage of Ronnie just kind of moping around at the club. He's just standing by himself in the corner, which is a remarkable change. Previously, when not under Sam's watch, Ronnie would be all over the ladies, dancing, getting wild, having a good time. Here, he's legit just standing there alone, standing at the floor, staring into space. Snooki attempts to talk to him about everything and tries to tell him that it's really good that Sammi is taking time away for a bit, but Ronnie tells her that no, he's gonna get Sammi back because he always gets what he wants. Number one Ronnie hater right now, by the way, just saying. Interestingly, Ronnie eventually calls up his dad for some support, and his dad comes to visit him and hang out with him and talk for a bit, and he gets support, which I find very interesting, that similar to how Sammi went home to her family's support, Ronnie leaned on his family. And I bring this up because one of the things that I find fascinating about Jersey Shore is that, it's hard to be what's the value of the show like this? We're just watching people party and have arguments and yell at each other and get really, really wasted. It shows to me it's a very interesting story about a found family. These group of 8-ish people who've come together and made their own little unique family while they stay together in these share houses and these arrangements. And the family, has grown stronger and learned to really rely on each other and depend on each other. But when the situation gets really, really serious, what we're seeing here is that the members of this little found family are having to go back and rely on their true family, right, for when things get real heavy, especially when it has to do with other members of the cast. And I find that interesting. As much as I can talk about found family and how good it is, there's something to be said for having the people who have always been there for you in your life also kind of there as your true foundation and your support. We are given a little bit of an update on Sammi while she's away, but mostly not until she decides to come back. She does surprise everyone when she returns to the house. It's 2 episodes later. Everyone is excited except for Ronnie, who leaves to be alone when she reappears. The ladies fill her in on all about Ronnie being depressed, and Sammi says, good. He needs to feel that and experience that. However, she also tells us in a confessional that Ronnie really isn't getting what the problem is here. We get a nice moment between them as Ronnie, Sammi, and Snooki have a sober night in together and prank Mike. On a later day, when the gang goes out to Karma, and guess what? Everything remains messy. When Sammi is drunk and has her guard down, she's all over Ronnie while they're out. And then on a different night out, drama erupts. Mike runs into a friend of his, Arvin, who's claiming he's here to see Sammi. Mike decides he doesn't want to approach this in the wrong way, so he brings Snooki and Jenni in, having them read the texts that Arvin has from Sam telling him to come meet. Snooki doesn't believe this. She thinks this is a setup, so she and Dina go to ask Sam directly about this. Sam denies the whole thing and tries to explain that Arvin is one of her friends from home. Of course, this sets Ronnie off. Jenni thinks Sam is withholding information about this whole situation, and then this whole thing turns into Mike and Ronnie versus Sammi. Ronnie is all over all this at this point. He keeps telling her to just go be with this new guy, and he doesn't want this runaround, doesn't want to be with her, doesn't want to deal with this. Sammi tries to apologize, but again, Ronnie isn't having it at first. Somehow, Ronnie unlocks a little bit of empathy here, and he makes a connection that how he's feeling in this moment is how Sammi must have felt in Miami when he was playing behind her back. We love to see the growth, even if minimal. So then what happens? Sammi and Ronnie sleep together. Later, on a different day, Ronnie's mom calls, drunk, to chit-chat with whoever she can talk to. It starts with Dina picking up the phone, who passes it to Jenni, who passes it to Mike. Mike decides to tell Ronnie's mom all about the Arvin situation, and then also decides it's time to tell Ronnie everything he knows about Sammi and Arvin's whole deal. Eventually, after lots of anger and arguing, he decides to just call Arvin up to get the story from him. Mike learns and reveals that Arvin and Sam have hung out in the past, at which point Ronnie grabs the phone to start to interrogate Arvin himself. He asks Arvin if he and Sam ever hooked up, and Arvin says, well, not exactly. At which point Ronnie then goes to ask Sam the same thing, and as this episode ends, which was the penultimate episode, by the way, we're in another, cliffhanger, stalemate argument thing. What's gonna happen? In the very last episode, as I'm sure you could probably predict by now, Sammi apologizes privately to Ronnie about lying and embarrassing him during a family dinner where Ronnie is too down to be around everyone. Sammi then proceeds to upset Ronnie again by hanging out with some guy friends at one of the clubs, after which they fight again. They finally get everything worked out to the point where when the season ends, in the last 5 minutes or whatever of the episode, they are officially broken up, finally, and for real. I don't know how many times they said it's over, it's done in the past 2 seasons, but it was way too many. It took way too long to get here, but I suppose it made for captivating TV, especially back in 2011. This is definitely a plot line that I think wouldn't survive very well in today's reality TV landscape, especially with the domestic abuse that's just thrown in here from both sides. Although especially how the show is edited kind of in favor of Sammi. And while miserable to watch, Sammi and Ronnie's relationship car crash this season does have some value in being shown and following along. It's important to show people difficult and challenging events that occur in other people's lives, especially those that involve relationships and being around different people. That's, important to put on TV screens. What's intriguing, however, is that the show is slightly edited in Sammy's favor by focusing on the physical and emotional damage that Ronnie does to her, such as destroying her things, throwing her bed out onto the balcony, yelling at her, pointing out how alone she is, and how poor her standing in the house is. They're both very toxic for each other, and the show doesn't seem to want to show Sammy's toxic behavior towards Ron as much as it wants to show Ron's toxic behavior towards Sammi. I think someone in the editing team, kind of knew and understood that the storyline that would be more easily grabbed onto by general audiences, especially 2011 MTV audiences, would be to make Ronnie more of the villain here, rather than have like an equal footing kind of thing going on. But from also what I've seen in producer AMAs on Reddit, and other times producers have spoken out about this season of their relationship, is that Sammi was also pretty bad to Ronnie consistently and constantly. Something we weren't shown. And I don't like to talk about like what happened behind the scenes and off cameras that much unless it's really relevant, and I think it is here, was that Sammi apparently was constantly like needling Ronnie about everything. And that was left out from the show footage, what became the ultimate, thing we watched a lot. That was not left in. But we can see some things where Sammi is often pretty bad to Ronnie as well. She's constantly instigating him, and I'll say she's insufferable to watch in arguments when she's trying to defend herself, as even pointed out by Mike at one point. Her tactic is to just call people names and bring up the same points over and over without much else. And I try to take reality shows a little too seriously here and try to overanalyze it and try to find value. And for a large part, I think Jersey Shore is mostly best served to talk about like masculinity and femininity and this like story of a found family. It makes me go like, well, is there any value in talking about Ronnie and Sammi's relationship aside from just showing people what toxic relationships can look like, so maybe they see it in their own lives and do something about it? I think that's good. It did feel like I was held hostage while watching the season. Probably how the other castmates felt. Moving on to some other plots, I'll say relationships really were the focus of this season, as seen also in Jenni's major storyline. Over the first 2 seasons, we're shown that Jenni has her own tumultuous relationship with her boyfriend Tom. They are still together at the start of season 3, although when you watch these early episodes, it seems like things could be a little tense between them. A few episodes into this season, Jenni runs into an ex-boyfriend named Roger. There's very clearly still an attraction between the two of them, but of course Jenni is still technically with Tom. However, Tom has been really testy with Jenni lately. A little justifiably, I might add, as Jenni hasn't been calling to update him with what's going on to her, and she even misses their anniversary. This all comes to a boiling point when Snooki gets arrested, and I'll touch on that in a moment, and Jenni tries to tell Tom that she's been dealing with that, but Tom is upset that she's not giving him and their relationship any attention. She and Tom have a conversation about her behavior where she says, hey, maybe I just kind of want to be independent for a bit, and she admits to hanging out with Roger. After some yelling back and forth, Jenni and Tom are officially broken up. A little while later, Jenni calls her dad, and he updates her on Tom. Tom and Jenni were living together in a home Jenni owns, and Tom decided to move out after their breakup, leaving Jenni's dogs all alone to fend for themselves. She has 2 small dogs. Jenni takes Snooki to go check out her house and pick up her dogs. When they arrive, they realize that Tom has also stolen her bed, stolen a gifted watch, stolen a hard drive with a bunch of her photos, and also logged into her PayPal and sent him a bunch of her money. Jenni is, of course, gutted and in shock at all of this, but with Snooki's help, she finds the strength to change her locks, get her dogs packed up, and head back to Seaside, her real home. The rest of the season showcases Jenni and Roger spending more time together and getting closer. They seem to be a really good match for each other, I'll say, and even work through a moment where Jenni accuses Roger of hanging out with another woman based on a throwaway idea from Ronnie. At the very end of the season, Jenni and Roger end up officially together. And it's pretty self-contained. Again, we're dealing mostly with the other people in the house, but this is sprinkled all throughout the season. And there's some cute moments and there's some tough moments, and Jenni kind of has to think really hard, and she tells us in a lot of confessionals where she's like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what I want to do with this. And it's kind of exciting, actually, when you get to watch them have the conversation near the end about whether or not they want to be exclusive. And when she says yes, not only is she excited, but everyone else is excited for her too. Snooki immediately is like celebrating in the streets about this news. But I want to bring up a theme here between Jenni's situation and Ronnie and Sammi's situation, and that is that men ain't shit. Ronnie crashed out, to use 2026 terminology, all over Sammi's stuff and broke everything, which is just like abuse. I'm just gonna say it, I'll put it out there. And then Tom did the same to Jenni after their breakup. seems like there's a lot of unstable men running around the Northeast in 2011. And honestly, through today as well. I live up here, I can say that. But it's like, what is Jersey Shore showing me? It's showing me that these men don't know how to, like, handle their emotions and handle when they don't get their way, and cannot deal when their ego or their pride takes a blow. And it's interesting to be shown how quick the Tom stuff was wrapped up and how drawn out the Ronnie and Sammi stuff was. And granted, that's because Tom isn't a main cast member. But we'd also been dealing with Tom for season 1 and season 2, where there are multiple moments where he's like, we're done, and then they're back together, or they stay together, and now it's finally all gone. I'm not going to put Roger on a pedestal because I know some things that happened later regarding him and Jenni, but I will say for season 3, Roger, in comparison, is made out to be a much better character and male figure in Jenni's life. Also, in contrast to Roger, as a cool guy, is another man who faces an interesting downfall this season. And out of all the cast, maybe you might expect me to start talking about Mike here, because I'm not a big fan of Mike. But no, actually, it's Vinny. Mike and Paulie didn't really have a lot to do this season. They're mostly just involved in everything else. Paulie had a little bit of a thing I'll talk about right at the very end. And Mike was just Mike. He's an instigator. He's a troublemaker. He's a womanizer. That sums up Mike. In season 2, Vinny had some really interesting developments. He's mostly known as the youngest member of the group and as the mama's boy. We're always shown Vinny in the intro to a season in relation to his family. We're always shown him hanging out, having a big meal with his family. His mom came Seaside in season 1 to cook a big meal for the group and take care of him, and she even like cleaned their whole house while she was there. That's Vinny's like characterization. He's also usually set aside from the other guys in the group as a different kind of flavor of masculinity, one who is a bit more considerate of other people's feelings and perspectives, especially in comparison to Mike and to Paulie, and Ronnie kind of is doing his own thing. But whereas Mike is willing to kind of get with whoever he deems is worth his time, Paulie has a little bit higher standards. Vinny always had the highest consideration for the other women there. And he wasn't ever trying to like take advantage of anyone. He always kind of took the high road whenever Mike would kind of push his buttons in earlier seasons. And so he was set aside in that way. In this season, Vinny makes a lot of strides in becoming more like the other dudes instead. There is a physical transformation. Vinny gets a spray tan, and eventually he even gets his ears pierced at the urging of Paulie, which right afterwards Paulie does make a comment about, wow, Vinny, now you fit in. Like, now he is becoming part of the group. But then he also gets a transformation in his reputation. In large part, this is because Snooki starts to develop deeper feelings for him, and he does not do anything well with this news, these changes. Between seasons, Vinny hooked up with Snooki's friend Ryder, and Snooki enters this season upset with him over this. As we progress through the 2 months of filming, Vinny gets closer to Snooki, but also continues to play about with random women, which upsets her. Vinny also doesn't want to do anything with her when she's drunk, which is respectable, but it upsets Snooki even more, because the same kind of sometimes goes for her when he's drunk. He's also very, very mean to Danielle, and this is where I first noticed, like, the transformation of Vinny attitude-wise. Like, I'm taking my notes and watching the episode, and I'm like, damn, Vinny, why are you this gross and mean? Danielle, to remind you, is Paulie's alleged stalker from season 1. She's a woman that Paulie hung out with, and then were shown in season 1 kind of what's played out to be somewhat comedic moments where she keeps appearing while Paulie and some others are hanging out at the boardwalk with some ladies. And she makes him a t-shirt, and she's made out to be this like obsessed woman that won't leave him alone. But that's not really what happened at all. That was definitely just like the way the show was edited to kind of give Paulie a plot in season 1. Paulie likes her. She's even shown hanging out with her multiple times after those incidents in the first season. So when Paulie runs into her again this season, she's like upset, obviously. Initially at Paulie, but I think she comes to understand that it wasn't necessarily Paulie who told MTV to make her out to be this crazy stalker. Polly brings her back to the house at one point to hang out, and things are going well. Polly still has the cringe t-shirt that she made for him that says I heart Jewish girl. I heart Jewish girls, with like an Italian flag and a Star of David heart thing. This like embarrasses Danielle. She's like, why did you hang on to that? And then while they're hanging out, Vinny comes home and he immediately just says like, oh, stalker. Which Polly's like, great, we made all this progress and now Vinny is rewinding it. And while you're watching, you're like, damn, Vinny, what the fuck? At one point, Vinny does seem to understand that Snooki's stance on bringing women around is not the same as his stance on her bringing guys around. He can handle her promiscuity, but she can't handle it when Vinny does the same. He says he needs to work on this, and then he just doesn't. Eventually, Sam gives him a talk about needing to do the right thing and set things straight, or like move on and don't keep like dragging Snooki along like this, because she is developing true, real feelings for Vinny. At a hangout with Snooki to maybe talk about things, Vinny just kind of looks like annoyed and unfocused, which really shows exactly kind of like what he's feeling in that moment. Later on, after an unsuccessful hookup with a rando from a night out, Vinny remarks that Snooki is a backup for him, and then gets all like really, really gross on her in front of like everyone. It's really off-putting, and Sammi even calls him out for being such a douchebag. So we have the full, transformation of Vinny finally here, where he kind of becomes, I don't want to say he becomes like Mike, but he becomes something that we don't like. In the last episode, Danny, who runs the shore store the cast has been working at, holds a party and invites the cast and some of their friends. Dina brings her BFF Lisa, who Vinny is very quickly attracted to and is trying to hit on. Dina does not want this matchup happening because she knows what Vinny's been up to, and she wants to help out her girl, Snooki, who has been developing feelings for Vinny. Vinny, of course, is just mad that Dina is blocking him from a hookup, to the point he calls Dina the most taboo name he could, Angelina. So yeah, Vinny went from like a considerate guy to a douchebag in the span of a whole season. I'm sure a lot of these behaviors were around in previous seasons, but just not highlighted as much or chosen to be shown off by the edit. Or maybe the thoughts were there and the behavior hadn't quite surfaced yet. But Vinny has definitely changed, at least in the way the show is portraying him and putting him out there. The last minor plot line I want to touch on, just because I mentioned it before, and it was concerning, and it was something else that was happening early on, so while I was miserable dealing with Sammi and Ronnie stuff, I at least had this going on, and I wanted to know more about this, and this was entertaining and engaging. Is Snooki being an alcoholic, is like the easiest way to put it. Snooki starts drinking like essentially as soon as she moves back in, and keeps going. She's kind of on this like multi-day bender. Jenni even remarks a couple days in that she hasn't seen Snooki sober yet. At one point, she's at work, and not only does she try to get Danny and others to drink with her while working, but she ditches work to go take shots, which Danny then catches her and has to drag her back to the store. After that shift, she goes to drink more, and she gets wild with this other older couple at the bar, where Dina and Jenni find her, and then she goes running off. She's a runner, she's a track star. This turns into a very famous moment. Snooki running around on the boardwalk drunk, kind of blacked out. Jenni and Dina and the camera crew running after her, and Snooki looking for the beach, not realizing that it's literally right next to her, shouting, "Where's the beach?" And then she runs into a guy who's like, "It's right here. Where else would it be?" She finds her way down onto the beach, into the water even, causes a scene, and while Dina and Jenni are trying to get her under control, get her back home, she ends up arrested. Public intoxication, causing a disturbance, public nuisance kind of thing. She does get set free later, and after a berating from her dad and feeling bad, she decides she doesn't want to drink as much anymore, although she still does. Which is why there's a few moments later in this season, like I mentioned earlier, Ronnie and Sammi and Snooki had like a sober night. She's trying not to go as hard. And it is believable as like this kind of was a wake-up moment for Snooki, maybe, I think. It is, like, concerning early on, though, to, like, watch. Danny called this behavior rock bottom, and I'm inclined to agree. And I think maybe it was for Snooki, at least in this capacity, and she's now picking herself back up. So that's kind of like it was scary for a moment, but then it became, like, better. And, of course, we got the very famous, "Where's the beach?" moment out of that whole thing. So that was mostly the story of Jersey Shore Season 3. There's a few things I didn't quite, talk about. Some small events. There was a cute little prank war. There was a water balloon fight at one point. Dina's escapades with various men. I didn't really talk about it at all, but Dina, as she introduced herself, kind of explained that she's had like a 2-month dry spell, so she's really trying to get herself back out there and hook up with some guys, and she has some pretty funny misadventures in that, but it wasn't like a huge part of her character. The more interesting thing for her was how is she going to fit in with the group, and how does she grow within the family. And like I said, in the past, I've really talked about how Jersey Shore is a really interesting look at a story of a found family. People who didn't necessarily know each other beforehand and came together and made this new unit that shares together, lives together, and grows together, and experiences things together. And, as part of that, it's very interesting to see Dina come in and make herself a piece of that and establish herself in it much better than Angelina ever did as well. There were some, like, things online that say that Dina she originally auditioned for season 1 and they went with Angelina instead. And so then when Angelina left, they were like, oh, let's go with Dina. Angelina made for some pretty good TV, but I think Dina would have fitted well with them back in season 1 and in Miami. And I know she stays throughout the future and through Family Vacation as well, which is pretty cool to see. I'm excited to see what she gets up to and what they do with her character and her experiences and her stories in later seasons. Speaking of the found family, I think it did have the potential this season to really get really, really wrecked up, especially with everything that was going on with Ronnie and Sammi and with Vinny and Snooki. Those two duos really had the potential, if things went way too far south and went really, really the wrong way, to splinter the family into two if it came to the point where they needed to take sides. There was even an episode this season actually entitled something like A House Divided. It was the second to last episode where we're dealing with the Arvin situation and all that stuff, and everyone's kind of taken sides on where they fall on that. But luckily, everything seems to have held on despite all the roller coaster of events and emotions and high highs and low lows. The found family still seems to be together at the end of the day. Whether or not that's because they still have the same kind of shared feelings for each other as true friends that they had in season 1 and post Miami, or it's just that they realize that they can make a lot of money off of being in the show and they understand the value of their fame and what it means to be a reality TV cast member and character now, and they want to hold on to it to keep being able to do the show. Either one could be true, they both could be true. Either way, I think the family made some interesting strides this season in growth, especially when it comes to intra-family relationships and disputes and developments. The other thing I usually like to ramble about for a bit when it comes to the show is it's a very interesting look into the different flavors of masculinity and what it means to be a man within this particular environment and this particular subculture that the show focuses on. This season, what it really showed us about that is just kind of how the guys in this group don't really react well and respond well when they don't get their way or when they get called out, and how they need to face tough situations and decisions and emotions. Really, all in all, it just shows that they don't have a lot of emotional depth, except for Pauly. Pauly seems pretty good. I'm just gonna say I wish they could do more with Pauly. He just stays out of trouble though, and he's just kind of the good vibes guy in the entire group. The most he dealt with this season was Danielle, and that was handled so quickly, and then he was kind of just dealing with everyone else's stuff most of the time. He did get to DJ at the very end, which is nice. But I wish they would do more with Pauly. He has fun. I want to watch fun. And I understand the value in showing Ronnie and Sammi's stuff, but I just want fun. Anyway, back to yapping about what it means to be a man. Clearly, for them, what we got to see, again, was them not responding well to these relationship problems. And you kind of get the vibe that what they want to do is they want to have these relationships and not have to put a lot of, like, energy and effort into it to maintain them and be able to, like, to do what they want. Like I said before, Ronnie really wants to have the best of both worlds. He wants to be able to have the relationship with Sammi and have her, but also be able to do whatever he wants. Vinny also wants a little bit of this when it comes to Snooki. He admits multiple times, he's like, well, maybe I have feelings for Snooki. I don't know. But him and Snooki end this season, they both say on kind of like friends with benefits kind of standing. It's hard to tell if either of them want more, but Vinny's definitely stated that he's kind of like, you get the vibe he doesn't want to be chained down to Snooki, is the problem here. And you get the same thing with Ronnie. And so it's a very interesting, like, thing to think about when it comes to talking about, like, masculinity and what it means to be a man. Is this kind of like, well, what it means to be a man to these guys when it comes to, like, relationship with women is that they get to have the relationship and they don't have to respect the boundaries of the relationship. That's kind of what they're like, what they are kind of relying on as they move through these experiences, which isn't great. It's kind of gross, but that's what we're learning by watching these people and watching them do this. And as one of my roommates who detests when I watch this show out in their living room and has to hear it through the apartment would say, great role models for men and boys, anyone who's watching this show. And she says, as she would also say, explains a lot about problems we have in our, like, American culture with relationships. I'll just say, for some personal lore, I was in high school when Jersey Shore was coming out. I started high school in 2009, graduated in 2013, which is like the exact time span of the first couple seasons of OG Jersey Shore. And it definitely had an influence. It had an influence aesthetically. There was a lot of the, like, same aesthetic suddenly adopted by people in my small Texan town. Both, like, male and female. We got the spray tans, we got the bumps in the hair, the higher heels all of a sudden, a lot of the different, like, tighter fitting clothes and everything, but then a lot of the guys, a lot of the same, like, outfit choices and stylings, but also the attitudes. Kind of a Jersey Shore, and this is like a critique from people who were, like, scared of media and the power and, like, influence it has. Jersey Shore definitely kind of pushed an idea of, like, an acceptance for sexual freedom, promiscuity, substance usage, all these things. I sound very prudish when I say it that way. Hooking up and using drugs and alcohol. That was, like, you know, adopted by people who watch the show and become fans of the show. They want to, like, emulate the things they see on TV and in movies and in media that they like. And it regularly was. I didn't watch the show back then. I kind of just observed. I was one of those kids that was too cool for that. But I understood. Like, I got what was going down. And now that I'm watching it so many years later and I'm, like, thinking about that, I'm like, this all makes sense. Behavior patterns that I would observe in high school and early college among people who I knew watched the show and consumed similar media like it, this makes sense. And this isn't, like, to drag on Jersey Shore. I'm enjoying watching it, except for when it is weirdly painful to watch, like the Ronnie Sammi stuff. One of my favorite movies is Spring Breakers, for crying out loud. So this is not to say that I'm a hater of this show. I appreciate it for what it's worth. Anyway, that was another episode of the recap episode covering season 3 of Jersey Shore. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, please consider following the podcast on your preferred podcast platform, as well as rating and reviewing it, or even commenting on the episode. All these things help me out and help me grow the show and get it to new listeners. You can also share it with a friend who you think might enjoy some critical analysis of reality TV or Jersey Shore, or just wants to understand what these shows are about without actually having to watch them themselves. You can also follow the podcast on social media on Instagram at The Recap Episode or YouTube at The Recap Episode Pod. Again, thank you so much for listening. The next season of Jersey Shore takes place in Italy, so I'm excited to see how this gang fares on the international stage and going abroad. But until next time, I'm going to be looking for the beach.